What is up, Functional Fit Fam? Today we're going to be covering the hip hinge and how to execute it safely and effectively. For today, I got a couple tools right here. Today I'll be using a PVC pipe and a kettlebell for demoing because those are the safest and most effective tools to learn the hip hinge. So what is a hip hinge and how is that different from a squat? So traditionally with a squat, we tend to go into what's called triple flexion, where your ankles, knees, and hips all bend at the same time, and you come back up. Essentially, your hips are lowering and raising in this vertical motion. Now, for the hip hinge, you're still lowering weight just as you would in the squat, but the execution is different. Rather than your hips going down and up, your hips are going to be going back behind you and then forward. So again, we're strengthening and lengthening the posterior side of our body, the hamstrings and the glutes, as opposed to squat, which is quads and glutes. So more of this posterior chain, as I like to call it. So here's how we're going to execute the hip hinge. We can take our trusty PVC pipe, and here's the hack on how you can start feeling your hip hinge and practicing at home. I like to take first the PVC pipe behind our back, and I like to connect it to 3 points of our body. Namely, it's going to be right behind the head, it's going to be sitting in between our shoulder blades, and then you're going to be pressing it against your tailbone. Now, when you perform your hip hinge, do not let the pole leave these 3 points on your body. I'll go ahead and give you the side view right here. So let's go ahead and perform the hip hinge. Just push your hips back, creating a soft bend in your knees. You should be starting to feel this in your glutes and hamstrings. Now, if you keep the PVC pipe against all 3 points on that back side of your body, that will mitigate and lessen any chance of you rounding your back. Now, you can tell that you're rounding too much of your back if the pole starts coming off one of these 3 points. Right here, it's coming off my tailbone. That means I'm bending too much in my back. So that's a great way to start practicing the hip hinge with the PVC pipe. Now, once you start getting that move down, now you can start practicing with the pole in front of your hips. So we're going to perform the same thing here. Shifting our hips back, I'm going to start pressing this pole against the top of my thighs, and my hands are going to be somewhere right on the outside of my thighs, okay? So again, I'll give you somewhat of a side view right here. In this position, I'm going to think about a golf ball created in my armpit, right? I'm going to squeeze the golf ball, the imaginary golf ball. I'm not going to let this thing drop, right? I'm going to keep constant tension in my armpit, thereby engaging my lats. This will help stabilize the spine. Big inhale. Now, as I lower myself, I'm going to keep constant tension and friction with the pole against my legs. Just like think about shaving your legs with the bar. Do not let the bar come free from your legs. Again, this will help you get nice and rock solid and locked in for a nice, strong, solid hinge. The reason I like to keep the pole grazing against your legs is that when the pole is further away from your legs, again, there's more opportunity for your chance for your back to bend and round, and we don't want that to happen in the hip hinge. We want to keep a nice, strong, neutral spine and just keep all the loving on the booty and the hamstrings. Now, once you master the pole, you can go ahead and ditch that sucker, and then you can start working in a kettlebell, a little bit more of a loaded tool to get better at the hinge. Now, when you're using the kettlebell, I always like to first practice in what's called a good morning. A good morning is when you just have the kettlebell racked up next to your chest. You can hold it like this, you can hold it like this. If you press it into your sternum like this, it might be a little bit easier to hold. And this is how you can also start practicing your hip hinge. The reason why this is such a good teaching tool is because when you have weight loaded up into your chest or in front of your chest, it's going to help trigger up a little bit more core activation. And the more core activation we have in the hip hinge, the more stable you're going to be and the less opportunity there is to, guess what, round your back. Again, that is a big no-no when it comes to the hip hinge. We want to keep all the tension on the glutes and hamstrings. Now, the next progression from there is when you start mastering the kettlebell good morning, you can start going into the kettlebell RDL. Very similar to how we had the PVC pipe in front of our hips, we're going to have the kettlebell in front of our hips. And the nature of the handle is really nice because you can create tension in your upper body by thinking about ripping the handles apart. That's going to elicit the same effect as when we thought about the golf ball in our armpit. It's going to help trigger up the lats, give you nice strong upper body stability, engages the lats, stabilizes the spine, and it keeps all the tension onto the glutes and hamstrings. Same thing as we did with the PVC pipe as well. Keep this kettlebell nice and close between the legs. You want everything to be nice and locked in close to your body as you perform the hip hinge. So this is an often forgot about move in today's society. A lot of times people are just sitting around too much. We're not utilizing our hamstrings and our glutes and our posterior chain as much as we traditionally used to. So this is a super, super important move to start working on and developing in order to get a more functional body overall, because that's what we're doing here, becoming functionally fit. If you have any questions, guys, feel free to leave them below. Let's go.